Welcome to Power to Lie. In today's conflict map, we are examining Iran versus Saudi Arabia, the proxy war nobody admits. Saudi Arabia has one of the most expensive armies in the world and has been a constant target of Houthi attacks. But when Operation Epic Fury began, they simply watched. Why? If you followed our Red Sea episode, you saw the Houthi missiles we covered there, attacking global shipping lanes, while Iran supplied the guidance systems and drones. If you followed our US-Iran series, you saw Operation Epic Fury begin, and you saw the region enter its most dangerous moment in decades. But there is a third actor in all of these conflicts that has never been examined directly: Saudi Arabia. Today, we ask, whose war is this, really? The Saudi-Iran rivalry predates the Houthi war, the Iran nuclear file, and every war fought through other people's armies since 1979. To understand why Saudi Arabia stood aside during Operation Epic Fury, you have to understand what this rivalry has actually cost each side, and what each side gains from a competition that never quite becomes open war. The roots are theological and strategic simultaneously. Ayatollah Khomeini's 1979. Islamic Revolution did not merely establish a new government in Tehran. It issued an explicit challenge to the legitimacy of hereditary monarchies throughout the Muslim world, including the House of Saud. Iran positioned itself as the defender of all Muslims, particularly the Shia minorities concentrated in Saudi Arabia's oil-rich eastern province. For Riyadh, a revolutionary Iran was not a foreign policy problem. It was what Saudi leadership characterized as a domestic destabilization threat, dressed in religious language. In 1987, Iranian pilgrims demonstrating during the Hajj clashed with Saudi security forces in Mecca, killing over 400 people. Saudi Arabia severed diplomatic relations. What followed was 4 decades of war fought through other people's armies. In Lebanon, where Hezbollah became Iran's most capable external force. In Iraq, where Shia militias aligned with Tehran competed with Saudi-backed Sunni networks following the 23 American invasion. In Syria, where, as we documented in our US-Iran series, both sides backed opposing factions in a civil war that killed over 600,000 people. And in Yemen, where, as we covered in our Red Sea episode, the Saudi-led coalition and the Iranian-backed Houthis have fought an 8-year war that has devastated one of the world's poorest countries, killing over 400,000 people and displacing 4 million more. Saudi Arabia has spent an estimated $150 billion or more on its Yemen intervention since 2015. More than the entire annual GDP of Yemen itself. It has been fighting one of Iran's proxy armies for a decade. The proxy is still there. Who finances this war fought through other people's armies, and what do they get in return? Iran's primary instrument is the Revolutionary Guards Quds Force, which channels resources, weapons, and training to networks across the region. Iranian support for Hezbollah has been estimated at several $100 million annually, though precise figures are disputed and vary by source and period. Iranian weapon systems, drones, anti-ship missiles, short-range ballistic munitions, have appeared in Yemen, Iraq, Lebanon, and Gaza, with forensic analysis confirming Iranian manufacture or modification. What does Iran get in return? The ability to pursue 2 visions of the Middle East that cannot coexist, and to fight for its version using other people's lives and other people's territory, while its own cities stay intact. Consider the asymmetry. Iran spends an estimated $700 million a year on its entire regional proxy network. Saudi Arabia has spent over $150 billion on Yemen alone, more than 200 times as much, fighting just one of those proxies. Whose strategy is working? Saudi Arabia's arms purchases guarantee American strategic commitment to Saudi defense. But they also create a structural dependency. Saudi Arabia's military runs on American technology and spare parts, a vulnerability Washington can threaten to exploit. So why did Saudi Arabia not join Operation Epic Fury? The explanation lies in a deal signed 18 months before the bombs fell. In March 2023, under Chinese mediation in Beijing, Saudi Arabia and Iran agreed to restore full diplomatic relations, reopen embassies in each other's capitals, and activate a security cooperation agreement dormant since 2001. This normalization, the most significant diplomatic event in the Middle East in years, signaled that Crown Prince Mohammed bin Salman had completely different goals for the future of the region than Washington had assumed. Here's the part that gets overlooked. The United States had spent 40 years and trillions of dollars building a regional security architecture designed partly to manage the Iran-Saudi rivalry. China resolved it, or appeared to, in one weekend of talks in Beijing. When Operation Epic Fury began, as we documented in our US-Iran series, Saudi Arabia was formally at peace with Iran. Joining, or endorsing a military operation against Tehran would have destroyed a deal that cost Riyadh enormous diplomatic capital to build. But the 2023 normalization was not driven by affection for the Islamic Republic. It was driven by Vision 2030. But here is what almost every Western analysis of this rivalry misses. Mohammed bin Salman's Vision 2030 requires foreign investment, tourism, and economic diversification. A direct war with Iran would destroy all of it overnight. Saudi Arabia is trying to build a post-oil economy, including a $500 billion desert megacity called NEOM, a tourism sector that does not yet exist at scale. Financial markets that need foreign confidence to function. Every project depends on international investors believing Riyadh is a stable place to put money. For the first time in Saudi history, peace is more profitable than conflict. That calculation, not sympathy for Tehran, is why Saudi Arabia watched Operation Epic Fury from the sidelines. But this raises a harder question, one that Western coverage of this rivalry almost never asks. If Saudi Arabia genuinely wants the regional stability that Vision 2030 requires, why does the war in Yemen continue? Why is Riyadh still purchasing American weapons at record rates? And what does Saudi Arabia actually gain from maintaining a rivalry it publicly insists it wants resolved? This is not an isolated event. It is one chapter in a much longer game of dynastic survival versus revolutionary expansion. Within the kingdom, the revolutionary Islamic ideology that Iran promotes, a model that explicitly challenges the legitimacy of monarchical rule, represents a genuine internal threat to the House of Saud. Framing domestic critics, minority communities, or reformist voices as instruments of Iranian influence is a tool Saudi security services have deployed repeatedly. The external enemy performs a consolidating function. It justifies emergency measures, suppresses dissent, and unifies the political establishment around the monarchy. Internationally, the Iran threat is the primary justification for Saudi Arabia's arms relationship with the United States. The kingdom's status as one of the world's largest importers of American military equipment rests on a credible threat narrative. Without a defined adversary, that relationship would face renegotiation. And with it, the American security guarantee that is the backstop of Saudi foreign policy. There is also an oil dimension. Regional instability creates a risk premium in energy prices that benefits Saudi Arabia as the world's largest oil exporter. Saudi Arabia does not engineer these spikes, but it benefits from the uncertainty they reflect. The rest of the Gulf illustrates that there is no single formula for navigating between Washington and Tehran. Qatar is the most structurally contradictory case. Doha hosts Al Udeid Air Base, the largest American military installation in the Middle East and the forward headquarters of a central command. At the same time, Qatar shares the world's largest natural gas field, the North Dome South Pars Reservoir, directly with Iran. That field holds an estimated 50 trillion cubic meters of gas, worth tens of trillions of dollars, and Qatar cannot afford to be Iran's enemy because Iran literally sits on top of it. Doha also hosts Hamas's political offices, maintains back-channel contact with Tehran, and has served as a mediator where Washington needed a channel Riyadh could not provide. Qatar has chosen functional neutrality, and both Washington and Riyadh tolerate it because Qatar's value as a back-channel is worth the friction. The United Arab Emirates took a different path. Abu Dhabi withdrew from the Yemen coalition in 2019, calculating that the war was a trap, costly, unwinnable, and damaging to Dubai's foreign investment model. The UAE opened back-channel contacts with Iran and moved to reduce maritime tensions. Like Saudi Arabia, the UAE concluded that prosperity required accommodation with Tehran that strict alignment with Washington would not permit. Bahrain, host to the U.S. Fifth Fleet, maintains the most consistently anti-Iran posture in the Gulf, reflecting a specific vulnerability. It is a Sunni monarchy governing a majority Shia population, into which Saudi Arabia deployed troops in 2011 to suppress Arab Spring protests Riyadh attributed to Iranian instigation. For Bahrain's ruling family, the Iranian threat is an existential challenge to continued rule. not abstract strategy. The 2020 Abraham Accords, in which the UAE and Bahrain normalized relations with Israel, showed that Gulf states will rewrite the map of regional alliances when economic interests demand it. Saudi Arabia is watching, calculating, and waiting for the right moment. What would Saudi Arabia actually lose if Iran-US tensions resolve tomorrow? A comprehensive Iran-US agreement, nuclear deal restored, sanctions lifted, would produce a regional realignment Riyadh has not prepared for. The American security guarantee would weaken. If Iran is no longer the designated regional adversary, the U.S. military presence in the Gulf requires new justification. Saudi Arabia would lose its strongest argument for keeping American military assets nearby, and with it, decades of leverage over American foreign policy. Iran would re-enter the regional economic system. Sanctions relief would allow Iranian oil exports to increase by an estimated 1 to 1.5 million barrels per day. Saudi Arabia and Iran compete for the same oil customers. Every barrel Iran adds to global markets puts downward pressure on the prices Saudi Arabia needs for Vision 2030. A sanctions-free Iran is not just a political rival. It is a direct economic competitor. The humanitarian costs of the Yemen intervention would return to the center of international scrutiny, and the arms relationship with Washington would face renewed pressure. Saudi Arabia's position across all of these episodes, the Red Sea, the US-Iran series, Operation Epic Fury, illustrates a pattern conflict map has documented repeatedly. The actors most visible as combatants are not always the actors most invested in a conflict's continuation. Saudi Arabia has fought Iran's proxies for a decade, signed a normalization agreement with Iran, condemned Iranian aggression, and refused to join a military campaign against Iran. None of this is contradictory. It is the rational output of a government that has calculated, by its own interests, that a managed rivalry is more useful than either full war or genuine peace, which raises the question this episode cannot answer. If Saudi Arabia, Iran, the American defense industry, Iran's proxy networks, Gulf energy exporters, and several regional governments all have structural interests in this competition continuing, who has an interest in it ending? And if that constituency exists but holds no political power, or does not exist at all, what does that tell us about the odds that this conflict, which nobody officially admits to fighting, will ever officially end? That's Conflict Map for today. If you want to see how political narratives are fact-checked with data, true, false, or framed is coming soon. And if you want to understand how history explains the present, history behind the lie is also on the way. Subscribe so you don't miss either. Thank you for watching. See you next time.